The day after King Charles was crowned at Monza, Charles Leclerc is your championship winner, at least for Italians, in 2024. I mean, really, he got Monza and he got Monaco, and I think those are two of the. If he'd gotten Silverstone, I feel like that's like a triple crown, Tim. It's just the two of the most looked at, watched, enjoyed races, and even though Monaco's race really isn't that good anymore. Charles Leclerc with a big win on no tires. Amazing drive yesterday. But, the funny thing is this morning, all anybody can talk about are McLaren team orders. So where do you want to start, Tim? Because do we start with Ferrari? Do we start with that great driver? Do we start with McLaren? And do they swap drivers? Should Oscar have passed? Like, there's a lot of...
Yeah, I think one of the big things is obviously starting with... We should probably start with the team orders. I think, it's time. We need to have this conversation.
Right. Now, for anybody that missed it, let me just give a little context. We had a McLaren front row lockout. They did finish 2 and 3. And if you look at that on the surface and you didn't watch the race, you're probably like, well, that's great. That's awesome. Hey, man, whatever. Yeah. And look, where did Red Bull finish? Oh, 6th and 8th? That's fantastic. Look at that. But the problem is that Lando and Oscar were able to get through the first few corners on lap 1 together, and it looked like they were going to be 1 and 2 the whole race, and that's what it was going to be. But I believe it was the 4th corner where Oscar, through the chicane, snuck up on Lando and passed him. While doing that, Charles Leclerc, the eventual race winner, was able to follow Oscar through on a slipstream, putting Lando in 3rd place and putting him at a disadvantage from the start. Now, was Lando napping? Tim, I'm going to ask you. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I don't think he was napping, but it does go against his, this record that people are keeping tallies of as bad starts or bad opening laps and all that kind of stuff, unfortunately. I think if he had a broken, and he said this himself, if he breaks 5 meters later, 10 meters later, whatever. I mean, does he hold on to the position? Actually, I think he probably crashes right into Piastri. Because,
that's what he said. He said that.
Yeah, because I think he's on a clean side of the track, but it's still not. It's not the racing line of the track, and it's not the braking line of the track, and that's where a lot of the grip is. Anyways, that's where Oscar Piastri is. He's on that braking line. He's got the extra, just that little extra grip on an opening lap. I think if there were team orders, Piastri wouldn't have made that move. He muscled his way past, let's be honest.
He did.
Good clean pass, by the way. That was a great pass. That was a great pass.
Yeah.
I'm not taking anything away from what Oscar did. That was an incredible pass. And then Lando gets caught up with, a little bit of oversteer there in between the two parts of the chicane. Car gets really loose on him. And then obviously you can't get power down, can't get a good exit, and that allows Charles Leclerc to snap up P2. Is that the winning move? Is that part of how he was able to eke out the one stopper? No, I don't believe so. I know we're still combing through data on all this stuff, but the more I look into this, the more it just boils down to two McLarens fighting each other throughout the entire race, using a lot of the tire, really pushing both teammates pushing each other. And then also on top of all that, you have internally McLaren and, strategy trying to figure out, okay, well, how can Oscar get the win? How can Lando get the win? And you have these two sides of the garage competing against each other.
Right.
And while they're doing that, you've lost touch with Ferrari and what are they doing? What's Mercedes doing, etc. And that's how Ferrari's able to eke out this win. Obviously some great driving from Charles Leclerc as well, because that tire looked like ground beef at the end of the race. Leclerc was incredible to make it all work as well. And so was Sainz. Sainz did a great job too. It was a bold strategy from Ferrari, and we'll get into it, I think, a little bit, because I think there's a lot to unpack with Ferrari and that and everything that happened for them in Monza. But Andrea Stella and Zach Brown Monday morning, they got to have this conversation about team orders.
Well, Andrea Stella in the press after the race. And by the way, for anybody that doesn't know, later on in the race, Charles Leclerc was 10, 15 seconds up. McLaren were closing, but a lot of people said, listen, Lando had to slow down to allow Oscar by earlier this year by I think 5 seconds.
Yeah, it was quite a bit. They didn't have Hungary.
Yeah, they didn't have 5 seconds between them this time. I think it was 3.5 or 4.
Yeah.
And Lando is absolutely squarely in the World Drivers' Championship window now to potentially beat Max Verstappen. I think he's 60 points behind, something like that.
Yeah.
And so why not switch them instead of going after Charles for the win? Why not switch them? Your race in the World Championship points is not with Ferrari. It's with Red Bull. Mm-hmm. And so if you flip the two drivers, Lando gets 3 more points. It puts him that much closer to Max. And over the course of the next 6 or 7 races, those 3 points could be enormous. They could be huge. And Andrea Stella said in the press afterwards, it was funny to hear Zach Brown's response and Andrea Stella's response, because Zach Brown says, we have 2 1A drivers, which I don't know if you saw the Will Buxton clip that's been floating around, but he quite literally goes, like when Zach says that, he just really, I couldn't believe he rolled his eyes like that. And then obviously, Andrea Stella said something different. He said, it's time that we acknowledge that we are actually in the World Drivers' Championship, which it sounds like, based on the way that they were acting, Tim, that within the team, they were like, no, that's too good to be true. We can't focus on that.
Yeah, for a while they were at him. They were.
But now they got to make a decision. What do they do, Tim?
They have to enact team orders.
Okay.
Have to. I mean, even if you had done it coming out of the summer break, which is where I thought they probably should have.
Yes.
Is the fact that you get into the start of this race and you have Piastri, let's say he stays positioned in P2. Mm-hmm. You then, you're going to sacrifice him a bit, right? You're going to sacrifice him to fend off or cover off the Ferraris. And what's that? That's going to allow Lando to open up a bigger gap.
Yep.
And it's going to allow him to pit when he needs to pit. And it's going to allow their strategic department to really focus on Lando and his race and getting the win, which they should have come away with the victory here this weekend. And so that's what team orders will do for you. And that's an extra 10 points. That's not 3 points, it's 10. And that's a huge swipe out of that championship. And it makes everything that much closer because, the next 2 races, I think, is going to be painful for Red Bull, and we'll get into that as well. But once we get through those 2 races, there's 3 weeks off.
Yeah.
And that's 3 weeks that they can work on cars and figure things out and get back on track. And so by the time you get to Austin, you could have a different Red Bull.
Yeah.
Right? And then
they could be right back. Right?
They could be right back in it. It could be stronger. You just don't know. That's the thing, right? With Red Bull Racing. So this is the time now for McLaren to be, getting as many points as they can. They should already know that Red Bull is going to be having difficulties at these next few races. I would have said that, Zandvoort, Monza, that's really not McLaren territory, but these next 2 will be. So I think at this moment, that's where you kind of have to really take a big bite out of the championship, because you're not at tracks that are suiting, what your car is really, really good at.
Right.
So but by the time you get to some of these other tracks,
what tracks are you thinking specifically? That
Austin, I don't know how good McLaren will be in Austin. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's going to be a great track for them. So and same with Mexico.
Yeah.
I don't know how great it's going to be. Brazil might be pretty good for them. I don't know about Austin and Mexico. And let's say that they start running into engine problems or whatever, right? I mean, then this whole thing flips on its head And the 10 points that the extra 10 points that you probably should have had in Monza, well, they're now gone. Like, it's just, you see what I mean? Like, it's just
you may
like
have to change a power unit, gearbox, things like that even, right? Like, we're going to start 15th today. That can happen.
And so that's where I think, Adam, like they should have really considered it for this race and moving forward. Look, I love Piastri. I think he's
awesome.
I think he's going to be a world champion. Like, if McLaren continues on the path that they're on, yeah, I think Piastri can be a driver's champion as well. Like, he's amazing. But he's over 100 points back.
Yeah.
Like, let's be a little more realistic here. We know that McLaren and probably even Ferrari now are going to be challenging for P1 and constructors. We never really believed that Lando could challenge for the driver's title. I think Lando was probably the only one who believed it out of anybody in the world. And lo and behold, he's right. Like, he can challenge for this championship. Max Verstappen even said so as well. So, like, what are we doing?
Yeah. Well, so I guess the question becomes, Tim, how do you have this conversation with the drivers? Let's say they're in the office this morning.
Yeah.
What do you? Because on the outside, it seems like this is a relatively easy conversation. This is Oscar's sophomore year. Lando's been with the team for a long, long time. McLaren's young drivers program for even longer than that. It is his turn. He's 100 points. There's a 100-point gap versus a 60-point gap. Like, there's so many reasons why. But it is complicated slightly by, and I don't think this is this man's fault, but Oscar's agent happens to be Mark Webber. And if you know the Red Bull early success years, you know the role Mark Webber played and the controversy that he and Sebastian Vettel had. And a lot of people are still on Mark Webber's side about that, and I get it. I completely understand that. Different situation, but Mark Webber, forget Oscar Piastri for a second. Mark Webber does not seem like somebody who's going to take something like that lying down. We do need to, though, bow to reality. How, if you're Zach Brown and you're Andreas Stella and you're talking to the two drivers today in the same room, how do you do that?
You just gotta let them have it, man. You can't.
Say it.
I think it's like a Band-Aid. You just gotta rip it off. Just rip it off. And I think Oscar will. He's not going to be super thrilled, but I think he'll do what he needs to do to be a team player.
Okay.
Like, I don't think Oscar's going to. I don't think Oscar will push back on it, right? Like, he knows. Yeah, he knows. He's out of it.
Stupid.
Like,
doesn't seem like an egomaniac either.
No, and the big thing with McLaren is they let the two of them fight this long, and Lando beat him.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. Maybe that's not going to happen next year, though, right? Like, Things may change, and it can be flipped and the other way around. Like, maybe this is Lando's year, and maybe next year could be Oscar's year.
Yeah.
We don't know. But at the same time, he is closer. He's done better in qualifying. And frankly, I think part of Lando's race pace and race craft is better than Oscar's at the moment.
Okay.
At the moment. Like, I think Oscar was a faster driver in Monza. Don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think Oscar probably could have had pole in Monza had he not made a few mistakes here or there. And I think in the race, Oscar, again, was faster, but he's not fighting for a world championship.
Right.
So.
Okay. All right.
It's tough, man, but like, what are you supposed to do? Adam, you're the team principal of McLaren. What do you do?
Well, this is the thing. Like, it's hard to know where the egos are at in the room. Obviously, if you're a Formula One driver, you have some sort of confidence.
They're everywhere.
Yeah, you should. You should have. They should fill up the room. But I get the sense that both of these guys, when the testosterone is down, are pretty reasonable. And I think it's time that you listen. Lando you didn't have to. He just gave you, 3-4 more years of his service. You did pay him handsomely for it. When he could have gone Red Bull, and Red Bull would have taken him in a heartbeat, go be teammates with Max, with your buddy, whatever. And he said, no, McLaren is my team. And he had no real reason. Like, Tim, when we were talking when you were in Bahrain, we weren't saying, hey, McLaren could win a championship this year. We were saying, hey, they're more competitive, maybe in 25. Nobody was saying McLaren could win a championship this year. So to me, it's like, Oscar, listen, I appreciate this, but Lando's beaten you. He's been at this team forever, and he's committed long term. This is a real easy discussion. Lando's the driver, and we need you to do that. And if the situation was reversed, I would expect Lando to do what I'm asking you to do. And next year, make sure that I'm having to have that conversation. You make sure you beat him next year. So I don't know, man. It's been so long since this team won a team championship because they were famously disqualified for the last one. And the last drivers' championship was Lewis Hamilton. And I think, a team championship and a driver championship in the same year for this tortured brand in Formula One, really tortured, and tortured fan base would be enormous. And I include myself in that. It's the fact that they have not won anything in the Papaya era, that it's all like the silver Vodafone, Ron Dennis years were the last sort of great gasp of this team until recently. You've got to take advantage of this. You got to give Papaya fans something to go for. I know in Miami now they're selling McLaren grandstands, so you can sit with McLaren fans now. And that Tim, 3 years ago, that was not happening. There's no way that would happen.
Yeah, no way.
This team is on the rise. And I get the mistakes, and I totally get it. You got to win both championships this year. If you don't, it is a disappointment. There was a point where you could say, oh, well, if they just got the team championship, we'll be okay. It'd be fine. But now it's like, if you don't get both, that's going to sting a little, right?
It's funny because it's like, I think a lot of us are expecting, McLaren to just commit to the championships, right? Like, just like feel like there is some commitment, like there's been commitment towards constructors,
right?
But there hasn't been commitment towards drivers because I just don't think they thought they could do it.
Right.
And that's really weird when you think about that for a second. You were a Formula One team. I remember being on a Zoom call with Dan Fallows from Aston Martin back in February, and he said to me, we're going to win some races and beat Red Bull. Like, straight off the hop. Mm-hmm. I love that, right? That's great. That was a great soundbite for me. I could take that and run. But at the same time, it's like the amount of confidence that they have in themselves, right? Like, and right now, we're finally starting to Stella letting it eke out. Like, yes, I think we're in contention for this drivers' championship. And it's like, dude, I think you've been in contention for this thing, 5 races ago. Like,
get on this.
Let's go here, right? Like, come on. So I like that they are sounding like they're committing to all this, which, they should be. They have a great car. They may not have the best car at every single race, but they've got a car that's good across the board. And talking about Red Bull, we don't know what's going to happen there.
No, we don't.
We just don't. And the fact that Max Verstappen was so far off the pace, just shocking. Like, I can't believe it. Like, and I think Max really made that car quicker than what it was. Like, I don't like that. That's not a P6 car. Like, I remember last week, I think it's a P6 car. That's like a P10 car. Like that P8. Like, it's not good. Like,
no, he
called it an undrivable monster,
which is crazy. That's a crazy quote from Max,
But he was like legit telling us telling everybody the truth. Like, this is what I think. He's like, this is what I've done. I can't do anymore. Like, this is on you guys. This is on Red Bull. And just to see how much they have struggled over the last few races, and the next races that are coming up do not favor them whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And then you have to take a look at what was going on with the engine this weekend.
Yep.
Because there's some talk about that Honda power unit.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I wish I knew. Nobody does. He just made mention of it. They were having some engine things. He's already been slapped with a 10-place grid penalty for power unit change. He's probably going to have to take another one at some point. And that's where, if you're McLaren, like,
Take advantage.
you got to sink your teeth in.
Yeah.
Like, and you got to let Lando go and do his thing. And Lando has to make sure he's clean on a first lap. That's it. And that's it. That's, and then you're going to get some big points and take a huge swipe out of this championship. Now, sorry, I'm just cutting you off there.
Please.
I believe they know what's wrong with the car.
Okay.
But I don't think they can get a fix for it for quite a while. And that's why I say Austin, because I think that's probably where they can get a fix for. And how big the fix can be, who knows? And I think some of the problem is just baked into the DNA of the car. Like, it's just part of the car. And then also to add on top of that, you go all the way back to Miami, and Adrian Newey tells us he's leaving the team.
Mm-hmm.
Gone. You've got Rob Marshall, who already left Red Bull Racing before Adrian Newey. And for those who don't know, Rob Marshall was a big part of that 2023 car. Mm-hmm. A car that just destroyed everybody. And so was Adrian Newey. And so was Pierre Vacher. You lose Rob Marshall. He's gone. Adrian Newey then picks up and he goes. Mm-hmm. Now you've lost Jonathan Wheatley, mm-hmm. who's leaving for Audi next year. He's still there, but to what capacity is he still there to? That guy was the backbone of that team.
Right.
And now you're seeing them struggle with pit stops.
Yep.
And part of like Jonathan Wheatley's thing is getting the team in order, getting them running like a wristwatch. Like everything is on time. This is what we're doing. He was such a huge, or is still, because he's still kind of there, but we just don't know in what capacity. A massive part of that team. Massive. Like, just, I can't describe to you how important that guy is to Red Bull Racing. Gone. And so you now internally, you have these key figures who have left or are leaving in the likes of the situation that you're in now. This is where Adrian Newey would step in and be like, this is our problem here. We got to do this to here. And this is what we should probably look at. But he's not there anymore.
No.
So
you don't have that experiential background. It's interesting, Tim, when we talk about Red Bull, because Sergio Perez said, I've been in the same boat for the last 8 to 10 races, with issues with the car. But now all of a sudden Max has come to similar issues. So what do you think he means by on a quote like that?
I think it comes down, this is just a personal opinion. So I think.
Yeah, of course.
I think the way, Sergio drives and the way Max drives are two different things. I think Max is just that, generational driver that can just make something work and go fast. I don't necessarily know if he's great at, telling the team, hey, we need to build something for this. This is going to be a problem in the future. We're going to have issues here. I can feel this. It's not really working very well. It's kind of just like, here's a setup. Let's try and get the setup. Let's try and get this the fastest car that we can. And Max will just go out and do something with it and do something special. Where Sergio, I think he can feel these things more. He can feel the upgrades more. He can feel like the trend of the car. What direction is it going in? And once it starts to leave him, then he starts to snowball and things get worse and worse and worse because the car keeps leaving and leaving and leaving because they are developing the car in a direction. Mm-hmm. It doesn't seem like that direction's working, right? Like, so they have to really go backward. That's why they're running, that's why in Zandvoort they're running a old floor on Verstappen's car. They're running a new floor on Sergio's car. And
they seem like they're grasping. And, this comes at a time where politically, Christian Horner took a huge hit earlier this year. And Red Bull Global decided to stick with him. But, there was a lot of controversy around that with the WhatsApp messages and the accusations and all that. But it seemed like, hey, we want to keep this together because it's winning. And then Jos Verstappen obviously kicked us and dust at the beginning of the year and is doing it again now, saying, they got to fix some things. Internally at Red Bull, do you think that they believe they can get this fixed? Or are they worried about watching that, not just the team championship, because that seems like if things continue, that's going to change very quickly, but getting Max that next title, do you think they see that slipping away, or do you think they think, no, it'll be okay, we got this?
I mean, I think Helmut Marko thinks that they can get this thing back on the right track, but it's going to take a while. Where, it's interesting. I think it was Rachel Brooks asked Max like if he still believed in the team in terms of like belief that they could get this thing back on the right track, and he never said yes. So he did like give an answer. It was a positive one, but it wasn't like a yes, we can get this thing back on track. Like,
that is interesting.
Yes, I believe that we can do this and whatever. Like he really what's the word I'm looking for? He really just looked like not awestruck, but just beside himself. Just didn't know what to say. Like, just like he had tried everything he could try and he did everything he could do. And the fact that they got a P6 and a whatever it was, P6 and a P8 out of this weekend is remarkable. I mean, that car looked horrible. Yeah. Like, awful. Yeah. I mean, both drivers did well, like to score decent points with that thing.
Yeah. Well, okay. So one team that is unquestionably going in the right direction, Tim, is Ferrari. A first and a fourth at Monza. And it seems like their car is now, I mean, they were always in the mix, but it seems like, oh no, like they might just challenge McLaren, for race wins now. But McLaren might be okay with Ferrari being good. Why?
Well, I mean, you're taking points away from Red Bull, right? Like you just are. Like the more like Leclerc and Sainz get in the action, you're taking drivers' championship points away from Max, and the more that the team does well, you're taking points away from Red Bull and the constructors. And when you're doing that, I mean, McLaren's already close. Yep. So, really close now. What is it, 8 points? Yeah. Is that what it is? I believe it's 8 points.
I'll look it up.
Eight points. It's 8 points. Yeah, okay. And so, like, this is great. I mean, incredible for Ferrari. Like, I think we'd been talking about this, where it's like, what is their trajectory? Well, they need to bring some updates that are going to help them get back on the right track and get going in the right direction. I mean, the car didn't look fantastic in qualifying, but it looked really strong in race pace. And it seems like with this generation of car that's how it kind of always begins. Like, it starts with the race pace. It starts there. And then once teams start noticing that the car is good with the tires, they're able to push more, the tire doesn't grain as much, and then they're able to somehow turn that into a quality race car, right? Yep. And that's the direction that like McLaren started going in, right? It was, hey, let's have good races. Yep. And then they start learning about that. And then they start implementing some of it into their quality setups. I think like what Ferrari brought this weekend, Adam, is a huge update. It was massive. And I think that's helped them a lot. I mean, rear wing, which was circuit specific, which they're calling the Monza special. I love that. But I mean, Adam, just, the bold strategy. I mean, when was the last time you saw Ferrari have confidence in their strategic department?
It's pretty amazing. It was funny. Even Charles, when they pitted him earlier, he was like, what are we doing? Like, why are we doing this now?
Yeah.
And I'm like, like here's another Ferrari like headline that we're going to be talking about after the race. And they turned out to look like geniuses. And to Charles' credit, he made them look that way. He managed the tires well. Clearly, the degradation between the McLarens and the Ferraris were different because, the McLarens were, I think, losing the front left tire very quickly. They were also tearing a shred out of each other, right? Like, so, Ferrari wasn't doing that. No. And Charles being as far away as he was lined up perfectly with their window. I think Carlos Sainz had a really, really good race that we're not talking about because Charles won and it's a Ferrari winner, and I get that's why we're, but Carlos Sainz, man, Williams has got to be so happy to be getting this guy because what a race he put in. I thought he was spectacular.
Incredible. Yeah, he was.
He was, and to finish fourth with that strategy for him, I think is perfect. And I really think that he could have done what Charles did had he qualified just a quarter second better. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
It was a function of Charles had a better qualifier and it put him in position to win, and he did. And so I think what will be interesting, and I love how you said that Ferrari will take points away from Red Bull. Does McLaren need to be looking at finishing at least, like, they got to be finishing like 1-3 or a 2-4 or a 2-3 with Ferrari most of the way, right? They're hoping for something like that, probably.
Yeah, I would say so, because then you're just taking huge amounts of points away from both the Drivers' Championship and also the Constructors' Championship, which is good for Lando and it's good for McLaren.
Yeah.
I think I just think when you look at how strong they were this weekend, they'll probably be strong again in Baku. Singapore is a good track for them as well. I mean, they were really strong there last year. I'm sure they probably will be really strong again there this year. And then from there on out, it's kind of like, okay, well, we're going to go back and forth, I think. Like, Austin, Mexico, Brazil, Vegas, Qatar, Abu Dhabi. Like, those are going to be back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And we're never really going to know, Adam, who's going to be the quickest team on the weekend,
Right,
moving forward.
Right.
We just don't know. But what we do know is the fact that, like, Ferrari's in the mix.
Yep.
They will be in the mix. Mercedes is going to be in the mix. Red Bull will be in the mix. McLaren will also be in the mix. So it's extremely exciting heading down the stretch. I like to see Ferrari. I want to go back to the race real quick because I really want to talk about just that strategy.
Do it. Let's do it. The one stopper.
Just because, like, it was bold, man. Like, I never see Ferrari be that bold.
No.
Like, never. And never really just throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. It's just like, hey, let's just roll the dice on this and let's just go for it. I love that. Like, when was the last time we really saw a team like just really just be like, F it, let's go for it?
It's because you have to be confident to do it. And that's scary for the rest of the grid. If you have a confident Ferrari team, which they were not the last couple of years, there was a little bit of, do you not feel like there was a little bit of Freddie Vasseur DNA in that, even if that wasn't necessarily his call? It seems to be his ethos, right? Where, hey, we got to try things. And if we screw up, we screw up. Or if we lose, we lose. But we need to try and test and do in this. And that felt like, to me, that was less of a data thing and more of a fuck it, let's go for it. And let's trust the human element.
Yeah. I love it, Adam.
Oh,
I
it's
thought
great.
I really just wanted to gush over that because
it's awesome.
I thought it was so great.
Well,
I remember, like, my partner, like Jasmine and I are like sitting there watching the race, and like, I'm just like, oh my God. I'm like, Ferrari's going to go for it on a one stop. She's like, what are they doing?
Well, we all thought, Charles thought that, right? Like, everybody thought that. I think, I like, I love, first of all, I love that they won there. I think it's kind of picture perfect. And the stories in the Italian newspapers this morning with Charles and that selfie, and it's the best podium. I think it still beats Vegas in my mind.
It's it's the best podium in motorsports.
It is,
in my opinion.
It's the best. It's incredible.
Yeah,
I think that there is I think there's something really, the sport's better when Ferrari's in it. What I loved him is that at several points this season, people have asked, as you would expect them to, did Lewis make the right call? Beginning of the season, people were saying, well, okay, yeah, he's leaving Mercedes, but like, yeah, Ferrari looks good, but they don't really have it together. And then later on in the series, or in the season, he beats Lewis Hamilton, wins at Silverstone, and people are like, well, he must regret leaving Ferrari now. I think he's looking at over at that garage, going, I can't wait to get over there. That is going to be a rocket ship next year.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
it is, and I think. At the beginning of the season, I've said it on the podcast, it was kind of just like, Lewis looks like a genius.
He does. He does.
But then, like, Ferrari really started to falter, and everybody's like, oh, did Lewis make the right call? And Mercedes starts to come on strong. It's like, that's what we're going to expect next year.
Yes.
I mean, it's just going to be back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. We never know which team, where, when, why. That's what it's going to be, and it's going to be great.
Total shootout.
And I'm going to love every minute of it.
Oh.
But, when we look at, I think, just Lewis going to Ferrari in general, it's exciting.
Mm-hmm.
You can just see it in Lewis's face all weekend, like how excited like he was to show up at Monza and to like see the crowd and to understand that, wow, I'm going to really be a part of this next year. Like he was getting excited for it. You could just see it in his face. You could see how bad he wanted pole.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he probably could have gotten it too if he hadn't made like a couple silly mistakes in the first chicane that really costed him. But I think that Mercedes could have been on pole. Now, could it have won the race? I don't know.
Their pace didn't seem to fully be there, right?
No, it didn't. Not the race pace. I think like where Lewis had the car, where he finished, like that was a good result. Like, that was a very good result.
Yeah.
And I can see why he was so disappointed with himself after quali, and good on him for really admitting that and being very open about it, because he doesn't have to be. So I thought that was great, because I mean, it really shows you how badly he really wanted that.
Oh, yeah.
Like
you hear what he said? He was like, well, I'm just not good at qualifying, and maybe they'll get better qualifying drives out of Kimi Antonelli. I was like, oh my God, Lewis. I mean, maybe they will, but he gets down on himself. He's hard on himself.
Sometimes he is. Sometimes, I've talked to him so many times and sat down with him in so many interviews and whatever. And just like, sometimes he'd be, you could ask him a question and he's really upset. Sometimes you can ask him a question and he'll be very like thoughtful with it. And then sometimes you ask him a question and he's just super happy. And sometimes he doesn't even know what he's saying because he's just so happy. It's great. He's great that way. I think for Lewis, I think some people were having the conversation like, is he getting too old? And it's like, that's where you start to lose some of the quality pace. And it's true, you do. But I don't think that's right now.
No.
I think it's the iteration of car. And I think it's since this generation of race car, it's very you see some drivers who are really, really good with the older generation of cars, like 2021, 2020, 2019, like that, in and around and through there. And those cars were like giant go-karts. Like there's so many cool things you could do with them as a driver. And if you were really good in karts, you were probably going to be really good in those cars, just because of the way you could drive them and throw them around and have the confidence in the braking zones and getting a lot of good front bite and a little bit of rear rotation. If you're comfortable with that, you were going to be really good with those cars. And then you came to these cars and it's like everything's on a knife edge. They're a little bit, understeery. They're heavier, more to throw around. You're really getting beat up inside of them. And I think for some drivers, they've just lost a tiny, tiny little bit in their qualifying with these cars. And I think Lewis is one of them. I think we'll see what happens with the 2026 regulation.
Sure. Yeah.
Because that's going to be different. And the cars are going to be different and the handling of them is going to be different. So who knows, right? It could go back to favoring those drivers who liked those types of cars and types of setups and that kind of thing. But I think in this generation of car, I think once Lewis gets it into like, that's where these cars have that little sweet spot that I always talk about.
Yep.
And Red Bull's always so good at getting the car. Well, they were getting it into that sweet spot. It's the same thing here with Lewis and George. It's just like getting the car into that sweet spot, that window where they can have the confidence push. They know the tire is going to be there. They know the car is going to react the way they want it to. And they can have that little bit of wiggle room, for slight mistakes. And we're talking like millimeters and all that kind of stuff.
What do you think about the announcement of Kimi Antonelli officially, especially after he put George's car into the wall in FP1?
I think I texted you on Fridays being like, hey, I think we're getting a driver announcement today.
Yeah. I assumed it was Bottas. I was like, I don't think.
And then like it didn't come until Saturday at 9 a.m. in Italy. I was sleeping.
Love that. Don't you love that?
It was 3 a.m. here.
Yeah.
So I was a little, but you know what? I think it's the right move. It's a lot though, right, Adam? Like it's a lot. That's a lot for an he's going to be 18. That's a lot. It is.
Why did they do it?
I mean, I think like Toto really believes in him.
Okay.
Toto really thinks he can do it. Toto knows and understands that there's going to be a lot of growing pains, but I think we all have to expect that he's going to a top team, right? It's not like when George came to F1, he's going to Williams, he's at the back.
Yeah.
And he's going to make a lot of mistakes. And even George said it himself, George even said, like, being at Williams to start everything and at the back, he could make mistakes and he could get away with it. And no one would really know. And it kind of feels like that the Lewis Hamilton when he went to McLaren.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
Jumped
it was
right in.
like,
yep,
he jumped right in and he was fast right away, fast immediately. And rarely did he make, glaring errors. But then again, if people are going to, because I, saw some people write about that, it's like, okay, well, Lewis's progression is different than what Antonelli's is. Antonelli doesn't have that much car experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like Lewis had a lot of car experience coming in.
Mm-hmm.
He went through a difficult ladder. Like the championships that Lewis went into and won were like crazy competitive.
Yes,
and
with
I'm not saying that
drivers.
Yeah, but like skipping F3 for Antonelli and jumping into F2, and is that too much of a step? And now going from one season of F2 right into Formula One, I don't know. It'll be interesting. I think it's going to be a fun experiment. I'm excited for him. I want to see him do well, because I really loved that FP1 session, even though he binned it. I thought it was great, man. He went out, didn't give a shit, and he just threw it on the line, dude. I love that.
Well,
I thought that was great.
Don't you? You need that from drivers.
That was great, dude. He was faster than Verstappen in like the first sector or what. There's a couple parts of the track he was like faster than like drivers who set the fastest time in FP1.
Wow. Okay, so there's a lot of
lap that he
tantalizing
crashed.
talent. Yeah. Toto said it's the fact that we have to slow him down that we're excited about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and he's right. You never want a driver you have to speed up. That's challenging.
Yeah.
You always want to have a driver you can like rein in, right? You always want that. What did James Vowles had said something that I caught wind of. It was like, we should tell Kimi it was an FP1 session, not a qualifying session.
I like that.
So I like that. I love it. I think it's great. It's great energy. I love that. And, once we see what, Kimi can really do, and it's going to be exciting. I like that. I'm curious to see what Toto does for 2026 though, Adam.
Me too.
I don't think he's done trying to get Verstappen on his team.
I don't think so either. And I wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Kimi ends up still in the Mercedes program, but with a different team. What about
George?
Me. Well, you can't drop George. The sleepovers at Toto's house, Tim. Come on.
Yeah, but
you can't do that.
Yeah, but Adam, like, I think like his contract's up.
Oh man!
Like after, I think his contract's up after 2026. I got to look that up, but
oh boy,
it could be either one of them. They both would be fighting for a seat. I think if Toto's really, really thinking of trying to get Max, because I think he is, man. He's talked about it enough, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. They want him. They want him for sure.
Right.
They absolutely want him, and I get it. Like he talked about it during the Antonelli thing. So. I don't know. We'll see. I'm just trying to angle the sun out of my computer here because the sun is rising over my left shoulder. So the other thing I want to say, Tim, is so with Kimi announced, it leaves the Sauber spot, I believe, to be the only one left. Am I wrong on that one? We don't know. We don't know what VCARB's going to do as well. Obviously, we know Yuki's going to be back, and we can talk about Daniel's race in a second, but. With the Sauber program, we know Karina Schumacher was in the Sauber pits. Mattia Binotto made his first appearance with his Stake F1 shirt on in the garage, which is weird. It's weird not to see him in red. So like, what are they doing with the drivers next year? You think Valtteri Bottas is going to stick around with Nico Hulkenberg?
So. Just to go back to George's contract, I believe it ends at the end of finishes at the end of 2025.
Wow. Okay.
So he'll definitely be fighting for a 2026 and onwards deal, I believe, with the team.
Okay.
Regardless. Where do we want to start with this one? I mean, because we're really trying to figure out who's going to take this Sauber seat.
Mm-hmm.
Here are a few things that I've heard. Bottas is in consideration.
Mm-hmm.
There is conversations happening between Mattia and Valtteri and Valtteri's team. And then there's Gabriel Bortoleto, who
had a hell of a race this weekend, by the way.
Yeah.
Went from for anybody who doesn't know, he went from 22 to first in one race, and where he's F2.
Yeah, crazy race. For people who haven't seen it, go back and watch it. It's an amazing drive.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Really was. He's in contention as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now he's managed by Fernando Alonso.
Interesting. Now is he part of the McLaren Young Driver program?
He is.
So would McLaren then lease him out to Audi, or how does that work?
I would say they would have to probably let him go.
Wow.
Because they don't have a seat for him.
Yeah, and they've got two great drivers.
Yeah, so I think they would have to let him go, and he would probably either be a reserve at Sauber, I think, or he would get that full-time ride. But he is in consideration. Now, another one I learned of the other day is, and this is all paddock gossip, but Teddy Porkchop, Teo Porcher.
Really?
Yeah.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah.
Considering the season he's had.
He's a reserve driver, right?
Yeah.
But I would love that signing. That would be a great signing. Like, former F2 champion. He's been batted around. Mm-hmm. Hasn't really been given a decent shot in F1 or IndyCar. Very fast. The people at McLaren loved him. Absolutely loved him. Thought he was extremely talented as well. I think if you're Sauber, you really consider that one. That's great. Like, if you're able to get Teo Porcher in there, I hope they do a shootout of some kind.
Yeah.
Just something. Like, just don't just throw drivers in there for the sake of throwing drivers in there. And you've got a good foundation. Mm-hmm. You've got a good backing. You've got Audi behind you. You've got the money. Like, let's put some of these drivers against each other, and whoever's the best comes out on top. I mean, let's go back to the days when, with players, days of racing where it was like, you're Canadian,
mm-hmm.
You fought for one of those seats. Like, you didn't just get it handed to you. So, I mean, let's see some of that. I would love to see that. That would be great. I would love to see a shootout between Bottas, Porcher, Bortoleto. That would be incredible.
Wow. And a veteran like Bottas who's so good in qualifying. So a shootout would lend itself to his strengths, I think. But it would be cool to see 3 rookies on the grid next year too, right? Because you'd have Bierman, you'd have actually 4, because it's Doohan, Bierman, Kimi Antonelli, and then if Sauber goes with a rookie, 4 rookies would be unreal. Like, what a crazy grid.
You'd actually have a rookie championship. Like, you'd actually have, like, who was the top rookie.
Yes.
Right. And every racing series I raced in had a rookie classification where it was like, who was the best rookie? And that was like, all right, they're the next one, or they're moving up, or they're moving on. They got big things in their future, whatever. But it was still great. So, yeah, that's who I've heard would be in contention for that Sauber Audi seat. And, those are 3 really good picks.
Right.
And that's tough to pick between. I mean, you got experience, you got speed and speed.
Right.
So that's a tough one.
And let's not forget, Red Bull has Liam Lawson waiting, and they could lend him out. And, as much as Helmut Marko has said he'll be in a Red Bull seat next year, we don't know which one. And I want to spin to them for a second, because obviously Nico Hulkenberg got dinged up by Daniel Ricciardo, causing Daniel to get a 10-second penalty. And then he drove into the side pod, Nico Hulkenberg, of Yuki Tsunoda, causing Yuki to retire from the race. And obviously, Nico then got a penalty on that. Daniel Ricciardo was able to finish, I think in race-wise, 11th place, but it's been downgraded, I think, the 14th now because of the time second. He had a 5-second penalty for that.
13.
It was 13th. Okay, so 13. So 5-second penalty for the Nico Hulkenberg incident. And then when he goes into the pit stop where he's supposed to serve the 5-second penalty, one of his race engineers just brain farts it and touches his front wing. And what does that mean, Tim, when you're serving a penalty and one of your race engineers / pit crew touches the front wing?
You get added 10-second penalty on time.
Because you cannot touch the car, right?
You can't touch it.
Can't touch it.
No, once the car comes in to get to serve a penalty and to get serviced, first thing you have to do, car pulls into the box, has to stop. Nobody can touch the car. You can't touch it. Then once the penalty has been served, you jump on the car, you take everything off, put everything on, and you let him go. And yeah, it's just unfortunate, just a brain fart, right? Like just not thinking. Maybe he wasn't. No, he was told. You could see, like you could see that that mechanic, like
his head
like,
dropped immediately.
It's like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
It's a shame. It really is. They were on for points. Daniel was on for points. Even with the penalty, I think Daniel was still on for points. Probably could have gotten 10th place. I think would have been tight. That midfield sort of battle there.
Albon,
I think and I think like Albon was kind of like he was kind of gone. Like Albon drove. Albon was incredible this weekend. He was amazing in this race. We didn't really get to talk about him. Just real quick,
hit him,
Adam. That was an incredible race from Alex to finish P9. That's like a podium for this team and for him. Like really strong drive from Alex. Same with K-Mag as well. Unfortunately, we'll get to him in a little bit. But again, Alonso, Colapinto, Ricciardo, that whole little mix there. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, really close battles. And I honestly think that, that would have been
Colapinto's.
I think that would have been Ricciardo coming away with a point.
Colapinto's finish is impressive for a guy in his first race, too. I have to say that. Good for him.
It was.
With Ricciardo, like he is strung together, and nobody wants to say this because he's not, he's not in a top team, so it's difficult to say, oh, well, he doesn't have the points. He doesn't have the points, but he is strung together. Great races since Canada, I would say. Yeah. At what point, because I know VCARB management they want him. They're happy to have him. At what point did they say, we got to make a call here on Lawson and on Ricciardo? Because that's what it seems to come down to, and perhaps Perez too.
I would say they're probably going to give it a few more races. I wouldn't. They may even wait till Abu Dhabi. Like the only thing is Liam Lawson, right? Like his contract is going to be, running out here in the next few weeks, and so that's going to be the main issue. And it's whether or not they want to keep Daniel. I mean, he's done well. He didn't have upgrades this weekend. I mean, Yuki did. Yuki didn't sound too happy with the updates that were on the car. Mm-hmm. But Daniel made what he had work, and I thought he drove really well. I thought this was a very good weekend from him at a track he's always gone really well at.
Yeah, he loves this track,
I should say. But yeah, moving forward, Adam, like I'll be curious to see what ends up happening with Liam Lawson in the next few weeks. But yeah, that's a tough. If all the drivers are really firing on all cylinders, that's a tough decision that Red Bull will have to make.
Wow. Well, I guess it's a good problem to have. I think so. We touched a little bit on Haas, but I want to talk about Kevin Magnussen getting the point, but getting the race ban as well because he's accumulated too many penalty points. He will not be racing in Baku. Just for people who don't know, does that mean Haas will have a different driver, or does that mean they will only be able to use one car?
Haas will have a different driver.
Okay.
We just have to wait and see who that driver is going to be.
Okay. Could be Ollie Behrman.
It could be Ollie Behrman, but Vasseur wouldn't comment on it after the race, so we don't know. Like where they've got a week to figure this thing out, which is good. I mean, it's not like we're in the midst of like a double header or triple header or whatever. So it's okay. What did you think of that penalty, first of all, before we get into that?
Sometimes, okay, so to put this into context, sometimes when I was a DJ, when I was a radio DJ, we were playing a song by an artist that the song, if the artist had been unknown, the song would have never made the radio, right? But because the artist was so big, the song got a chance because, and it wasn't really that good. It wasn't the artist's best music, but people love the artist. Take that and flip it on its head for Magnussen. I feel like that's not necessarily a penalty if it's not Magnussen. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Like there's a bit of a brand there and they're looking for him.
Yeah. I think he feels the same way.
Yeah. What do you think, Tim? Am I like, I'm just
I mean, even Pierre Gasly feels the same way. Like he thought it's a little harsh. That penalty was pretty harsh. And I think he's right. I don't know. I like good hard racing.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything wrong with what Magnussen was trying to do. There was very little contact. I mean, it was a tiny bit, but nothing got broken. No one was hurt. Nothing was damaged. Gasly kept his place. Like, I thought it was fine. I think just let it go. Just let that go. I mean, you were getting to the point now, Adam. Like, that's like, I mean, I think even Alonso had a lot to say about it too. It's just like, this is, you're not letting them race.
Yes. And I saw somebody tweet about this, and I forget who it was, but it was a very funny tweet. It was basically saying like, you guys think racing's changing, and it's because they were talking about the front of the grid. They're like, no, you're missing the fact that they're getting rid of the track menace, right? Like there's always been a track, sort of somebody who's always lived a little bit on the edge in Formula One.
Yep. Sure.
And they say track menace in a joking term, not that Magnussen's some sort of menace, but the one thing about him this year is he has been willing to sacrifice everything for the team, to get Nico Hulkenberg a point or two, to accumulate points penalty points where he's needed to do it. And I feel that race fans like hard racing. I don't know a single race fan's like, nah, I don't like a hard race. I want it to be, don't even look at each other. Like everybody wants a hard race. Yeah. So the FIA, and this has always been an issue, where they apply their rules and to whom, right? Because they don't apply the same rules at the front of the race where it might affect the outcome. I think it's a forever problem in this sport. I don't know how they change it.
Throw out the rule book and start anew.
Yeah, well, there's a few sports that could do that.
I'm with you. The racing is so regulated now, and it's like sometimes like you just got to let the dance happen and let the drivers sort it out for themselves on the track. Like you've got to, because they will. Like the drivers will sort it out.
Yes.
And sometimes like things are gonna happen, and hey, that's just this is part of racing, and I think that at this moment, that penalty for me, it's way too much. There shouldn't have been a penalty at all. Like in my opinion,
I agree. Yeah.
Should Hulkenberg have gotten a penalty for slamming into the side of Tsunoda? I mean, yeah, because like Yuki it ended his race.
Yeah.
Okay, 5 seconds. All right, yeah, that's fair. Okay, 5 seconds. That I get that. That's fine. But like this was like, give me a break. So now the guy's got. He's banned. He's suspended from a race, so he can't race in Baku.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see. I will be curious to see what more drivers have to say about it.
Me too.
On the media day heading into the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, because I don't think we're going to be done with this one, and I think the drivers are going to have a lot to say about it.
I feel for anybody that's stepping into a new car going into Baku.
Oh my god!
Like that's a tough order, man. That's brutal. That's like Jeddah or Singapore, like just tight races.
No
thanks.
Adam, it's going to be imagine if it's Ollie Behrman who gets the call in, and then you take a look at the tracks he got called in for.
Jeddah,
like two of the hardest.
Brutal. Yeah, he got all the unfun tracks. Honestly, there are certain tracks that even in the F1 video game I would skip. Like I how many times I've had to restart Monaco in the F1 video game because it's so tight. It's so tight.
Well, Adam, like all the tracks where it's like if you make a mistake, you are going to pound the wall.
Yeah, it's
like,
you've just burned $1 million damage. Like it's just there it is. The car's totaled. Start again. Anyway, so Tim, what kind of questions do we have for the episode?
Adam, we got a lot of questions.
Do we? Oh, great.
Yeah, we do. I'm just trying to think like where we should start here, because some of these we've kind of already answered in a way. Sure. But we'll start here with Dan Klubine. He says, "Can Adam please give us his best guess on what papaya rules are?"
Oh man, I don't. I think papaya rules
Good
just come down
question.
to listen to us, just listen to the race wall. I think I can't. If papaya rules were not already lending themselves to Lando, then they're not rules, right? Those
Yeah.
are just they're going to change, and it's going to be Lando, and it should be, and it should have been 2 races ago. But that's okay. Anyway, go ahead.
Tamara Sutherland, McLaren have clearly had some discussions around rules of engagement for its drivers, the papaya rules. But do you expect them to more actively enforce team orders in the future?
Yes.
While the Constructors' Championship remains very tight and the Drivers' Championship also very close. Yeah, I mean, something we did talk about, Tamara, but like, I really do feel that by the time we get to Azerbaijan, this should be sorted out. And it's interesting. It's not like Lando wants them to enact team orders or drivers' orders, right? He wants to fight for things. He doesn't want Oscar to move over. He doesn't. He had said this yesterday. He wants to straight up fight for things, and he was in a place where he felt that he was only good enough for P3 yesterday, and he was very open and honest about that, right?
Yeah.
Which is great. And so I would love to know what the drivers think about all that, because I honestly believe that neither one of them want team orders.
Yeah.
I just don't. Austin Forrest, he says, 2 questions. How does F2 eligibility work? For example, could Logan Sargent go back to F2? Secondly, with Kevin Magnussen's penalty points reset after his, will K-Mag's penalty points reset after his race ban? Or would he be banned again if he gets more penalties after his first ban? A lot of bans. To answer the first one, won't use Logan Sargent as an example. Let's use Franco Colapinto. I think he's like a good sort of baseline we can work from. So Colapinto obviously brought up to do the last 9 races on the F1 calendar. Could he go back and race in F2? Would he be eligible enough to go back and race in F2? He would be. Now, if Colapinto were to go on and win the F2 championship and then move on to Formula One and get booted out of his seat, can he go back to F2? He can't, because he's won the championship. So once you win the F2 championship, you can't go back into it. You can't keep racing in F2. You have to move on somewhere else. As for Magnussen's penalty points, it's a good question because not a lot of people really know this, but once the driver gets the ban, their points are reset. So they basically clear the decks. They're back. They start at 0 again, and they can accrue them as normal or whatever. But yes, those penalty points, they'll be wiped clean after he serves his 1 race suspension. Fiona, do you think McLaren will prioritize a driver, or will they keep letting them fight it out? How do you think it'll affect the World Drivers' Championship and Constructors' Championship?
Hey, Lando, and with any luck, we get another Abu Dhabi Classic shootout between Lando and Max. That's what we should all be hoping for, right? Yeah. Like Lewis and Max in 21. We should hope for that. We want that.
Adam, this is one for you, but it's a good one.
Let's go.
Etienne, if I sort of mispronounced your name, Peters. Would Ron Dennis even allow for the apparent undecisiveness that is running along the McLaren pit wall?
I think Ron Dennis would be too focused on the fact that they actually used color on the car. What do you mean the car is not gray and black? I think Ron Dennis was from a different era, Tim. I think that's what it is. Ron Dennis, I think, probably wouldn't recognize a lot of what Formula One is now. It's changed so much. It really has, and the data and the way that they look at things, and the fact that the drivers are actually buddies. Like, that's another thing that didn't used to happen. They used to hate each other. They would be, there would be friendships within, but driver rivalries used to be far more fierce. And I think, I don't know. I don't think Ron Dennis, I think there would be a lot of things that he would get to at McLaren before he would get to maybe indecisiveness. And again, I always say this, you got to learn how to win. And Mercedes were not ice cold in their first victory, right? They were learning. They just had a rocket ship. I think, and Ferrari really tested them a few years, man. Like there's very easily Lewis Hamilton could have lost to Sebastian Vettel a couple of those years. So I think all that said, let them learn how to win, let them test their mettle, and defer to Lando. That's what you got to do.
J Money, Kyle Larson would have creamed Max Verstappen today. Don't you agree?
What do you think?
That's your opinion, bud. Noah, as a Red Bull fan, I'm missing 2023. Hontaria Mamez, optimistic for Ferrari or one-off with new engine, etc., and home Grand Prix. I am optimistic for Ferrari moving forward. And I think if we, boil it all down to like this championship, and I think we've got like another type of a question in here about this as well. But I think like Leclerc, Ferrari, I think they do have a big impact on this, on the rest of the season and the championship as well, Adam. Like I can see them, because we do have someone asking, like Klox_11 is asking, do we see, Ferrari passing Red Bull? And you know what? If things sort of continue down this road that we're going down,
could happen.
I can see, Adam, like McLaren P1, Ferrari P2, Red Bull P3 in the Constructors Championship in that order. I can see that happening.
Wow.
Like, yeah, I know, crazy, right?
Crazy.
Oh, it'd be amazing. Just a few more, and then we'll rock on. We'll go to Caden Lee of the Performance Center.
Oh, hello.
Why are more teams not doing the one stop? Worked today for Ferrari and would have worked for George and Spa if you didn't get disqualified. Actually, that's a good point. It all depends on, I think, the amount of tire drag that the car generates. Like, do you have a car that's good with the tires? Do you have a car that's aggressive with the tires? And that depends on car, track, temperature, all of those things. And sometimes like a team can get all of those things right and still just eke out a one stop like George did, and same with Charles Leclerc. It's a bold move, and I like it. And it kind of seems like, Adam, this is kind of starting to trend in this direction where it's like, is a team going to be bold and try the one stopper? Like that, I think is going to be like a story for the end of the year. I think it's going to be a big story for next year. Like, who's going to be brave and try and pull that off? Like, I think, and that's exciting, man. I really like it.
Oh, I'm pumped, man. Next year, I feel like is a full-blown shootout between at least 4 teams. If Aston Martin can pull themselves back into the contention for that too, it could be really exciting. And I mean, Williams, I think will take a step forward too. They're an underrated back of the pack favorite or mid pack favorite for me. I really think that James Vowles is taking that program places.
Yeah. Patrick Sherman, ain't that Magnussen's one race ban too harsh of a penalty?
Yeah.
Yes, I think it's too harsh of a penalty. Billy Pond Whistle. Adam, this one's for you. Okay. Why does Lando suck on first lap?
I don't know that he sucked on that first lap, but you made a good point that it could be a function of the car a little bit, Tim.
Yeah, it might be a little. I mean, it might be a little bit. I think what happened in Zandvoort, Adam, I think what happened between the two of them, now that I've heard some more stuff, I think both Oscar and Lando didn't get a good tire warm-up. I think that's what happened to them in the second phase of their start in Zandvoort, and why it was so hampered was the fact that they didn't get a good heat cycle put through the tire as they were going to their box.
Right.
Or going to the start grid, I should say. So I think for Lando, I mean, you don't want it to become a thing. He doesn't really want to answer questions anymore about drivers' championship and starts and people, opening lap starts. And, that's fine. I get it, because reporters are going to pile on. The questions are going to keep coming. And not going to stop. And so I get it, not wanting to answer some of these questions anymore. And that's totally fine. But you just got to hope it doesn't become a thing.
Right. And if McLaren do the bold thing and the right thing, it doesn't have to be something that lands on Lando's shoulders. That's what I think that they don't seem to realize, is that in order to play it politically correct within the team, they're actually putting more pressure on the drivers and making the external pressures harder. The team has got to step forward. They don't have to announce it to the public. They just have to announce it through their actions on the track. Lando's our guy this year. and Oscar, your rear gunner. And next year it could be different, but that's what it is this year. Let's go and win 2 championships.
That's it, Adam. That was thanks everyone for the questions. That was great.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
We'll be back Thursday.
Yes, we will be back Thursday, and enjoy your cottage.
I will.
Adam's in cottage country.
I am. This is my my wife's family cottage behind me, and then I'm getting back to the city today. It's my daughter's first day of school tomorrow, so everybody's back to school. Good luck to everybody, and we're back into it. Tim, like the summer's over. We got to get back into the fall. Hockey season, football season, it's all on the way.
Oh man, our so for those who don't know, we had our SDPN fantasy football draft.
That's right.
Adam with a bold choice, 3rd overall.
I picked Travis Kelce, and I know it was going to bother a lot of people.
What
But
are you doing,
the reason I did it is because tight ends sink fantasy teams. They sink them if you don't have a good one. So I got two good ones.
You needed a running back.
Oh, but I got
good
running backs. I got good ones.
You could have had Bijan Robinson
Well, you know.
or Tyreek Hill. You could. He
Coulda had
dropped to me. For some reason, I ended up with Tyreek Hill for where I was drafting. Like, what are we doing here?
I know. Listen, I still feel very good. Yahoo gave me a minus or A- for my draft, so I'm assuming that means I'm going to finish last. It's not a good sign.
Okay, so SDP is back when? When are you guys back?
Tomorrow. We got 3 times a week. Yeah.
Oh, geez.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So what are you guys doing? Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday?
Friday. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. We're back full time, baby.
All right. Looking forward to it. You guys are always great. So it's always good for me to sit down and veg out and watch you guys. So I'm excited.
Well, I am too, Tim. And we got some great races to wrap up the calendar. I mean, 3 months left of this. So it's going to be real fun and exciting. And what a great end. It's such a different year last year than it was this year. Or sorry, this time last year. And in terms of Red Bull and everything. So I'm excited. Let's kick some ass. All right.
Thanks, buddy. See you on Thursday.